got a treat for you now. Are you ready? Yeah. Well, this is something different that, because I know you're not used to different from us, are you? No. We had been getting a lot of requests because, we kept getting from Mom, she kept saying, we were getting, how do I put this? She kept being told in sessions that, you need to change your diet. Remember, she kept saying that, and they were telling her, you need to go to like raw food and eat more fruits and vegetables, things like that. And when we were getting requests from people, it's like, well, why don't you have speakers that speak about nutrition then? And we're like, well, okay, but we don't really know any. And so, well, when some start coming our way, well then, okay, fine, we'll do that. Well, then this year we actually had somebody come our way. And so, and actually one of our staff is who brought her our way. It was really cool. I actually had never heard of Susun. I'm sorry to say that, Susun. It's been an honor to get to know her. Get to know you. It's really wonderful. I got to interview Susun on the Metaphysical Hour, and I felt really dumb. Really. But that's what it's all about. That's how we get educated, right? We get to learn new things, and I went into it knowing nothing. I'm going, an herbal infusion? What is that? I didn't know. But you're going to learn. It's really wonderful. Yeah, right here. It's that. I learned. I'm like, wow. And she's just talking. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is really, really interesting. And it can do all of that. That is, now I get it. I get why they're telling us eat. This is what you need to put in your bodies. I get it. And I've been doing my own transformation. I've been shifting all my own nutritional things as well as a whole lot of other things. And it's amazing what the body will do when it's given proper nutrition, proper rest, proper thoughts, you have to shift things. You have to get the junk out of your life. And what better place to start than right here? And I know Susan's going to be talking about this. Anyway, I don't want to take away from hers, but this whole philosophy, wise woman tradition. I mean, don't you know that that's coming from a place of grounded energy? I can feel it. It comes from there, spirit of the wise woman tradition. Okay? And in her biography, as we're reading her thing, I don't know all of your story, but I have a feeling that she had to start over a few times. She raises those eyebrows. How many of us have stories like that? Yeah, yeah. That's life. That's what happens. So I love it when it takes us by the nape of the neck and and does things like that. But then we can take that and we're able to help others. And how we can help others. It's so wonderful. And now Susun has 5 books out there. And how she's been able to really, really help women is amazing. So, but it's wonderful in how getting back to nature, wonderful, wonderful, nature and natural ways and means. So everybody, and the wise woman, Susun Weed. Right.
What a beautiful place you live in.
Thank you.
It is just gorgeous here, and I live in a really pretty place too. I live in the Hudson River Valley and the Catskill Mountains. And there I run the Wise Woman Center and keep a herd of dairy goats. I went out one day with my goats to play, singing goaty, 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 goat. And the sun did shine and the air was fine, singing goaty, 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 goat. Now you can sing too. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Well, we danced and we leaped in the woods so deep. Singing goaty, 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 goat. When what did we see but a bright fairy? Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Well, the deer were there, and the turkey and the bear, singing goaty, 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 goat. So we laughed and we danced and we twirled in a trance, singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Well, we walked to the stream and it seemed like a dream, singing goaty, 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 goat. Saw 5 turtles on a log and a big bullfrog, singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Then an owl flew by between the trees and the sky, singing goaty, 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 goat. With a chipmunk in her claw for the owlet's maw, singing goaty, 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 goat. Let's hear it. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Oh, the things I can be and the things I can see, singing goaty, 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 goat. When I open up wide to what's outside, singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. Singing goaty, 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 goat. I went out one day with my goats to play, and the sun did shine and the air was fine, singing goaty, 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 goat. When I was a little girl, there was one day that was very special. And on that special day, I got new clothes to wear and new underwear. And then I was taken to the doctor for my physical. And the doctor taught me really important things about health. You probably learned these very same things when you were a child too, because the doctor would examine me, and at the end of the examination, the doctor would look at my mother and say, she's in great health. And what that taught me was that I have nothing whatsoever to do with my health. It's in the hands of the experts. The parents and the doctors are in charge of my health, not me. And after proclaiming me to be in great health, the doctor gave me a shot. So I knew that in order to be in good health, you must use drugs. Very clear. Now, I am not being facetious, because we find that the vast majority of people in North America and throughout Western civilizations believe these two things, don't they? They believe that they are not responsible for their health. How's your health? I don't know. I go to the doctor and the doctor tells me it's fine. But they are not taking responsibility, and if there is a problem, then the first choice is drugs. Now, my parents made a grave error when I was 2. They had another child. The nerve! Couldn't they tell I was enough child for them? However, since I was in the South, I was expected to be a lady and not be angry. So instead, I got a bladder infection. Pissed off, huh? As a matter of fact, I soon found that getting a bladder infection was the answer to virtually all of my problems. Anytime I was upset about anything, I just got a bladder infection, and suddenly I got all the attention, which is what I wanted. I had so many bladder infections that I thought the color of urine was supposed to be bright orange. There's an antibiotic given against bladder infections called gantrazin, and it turns your urine orange. Well, I didn't think that there was anything wrong with this. After all, the doctor who was in charge was giving me the drug, which I needed to be healthy. I did, however, get out of Dallas as fast as I could. And I was at UCLA, and back in the 60s, when I was at UCLA, there was a lot of age segregation on college campuses. The students were young, and the teachers were older. And so when I went into the cafeteria one day and there was a woman sitting there who was like, God, she must have been at least 30. I thought, what's this old woman doing in the cafeteria? And being a curious sort, I went over and I sat down next to her and I said, what are you doing here? And she said, career change. I said, really? What career have you been doing that's so terrible that you want to change? She said, public health nurse. I said, what's so bad about that? She said, if I see one more young woman go into kidney failure because of gantrazin, I'm going to pull my hair out. And I said, what's gantrazin? And she said, it's an antibiotic given against bladder infections. And I said, does it turn your urine orange? And she said, it does. And I went, huh? Now, it's not news to you that drugs can harm you. But believe me, it was huge news in 1964. It was enormous news. It was, what? The drug that the professional who's in charge of my health has been giving me could destroy my kidneys? This was astonishing to me. How do I know if my kidneys are okay? I said to her. She said, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? I said, like everybody, I have a backache. She said, how old are you? I said, 17. She said, 17-year-olds don't have backaches when they wake up in the morning. That's your kidneys. Oh my gosh. What? So like many people, faced with this, maybe the expert doesn't really know how to make me healthy. I went off in search of something else. Many of you are searching for something else. And what we usually find when we're looking for that something else is called alternative medicine. Now, I am going to compress a great many years of my life into a few sentences, and you'll kind of have to fill in the missing years there. So, I was told that what I needed to do is to eat raw food and juice. So I went to my health food store and I bought a juicer and a 25-pound bag of organic carrots. And I went home where I might have lived happily ever after if I hadn't bought a book on my way out of the store. So I'm drinking my carrot juice and eating my raw salad, and I'm reading this book, and it says, human beings get nothing at all from raw food. The appropriate diet for human beings is brown rice. So I went back to my health food store, and I bought my pressure cooker and my 25-pound bag of organic brown rice, along with some aduki beans and seaweed. And I went home, and I'm eating this meal, and I might have lived happily ever after if I hadn't bought another book. And this book said, if you eat beans and rice at the same meal, you'll die. So I went back to the health food store and I bought every chart they sold on food combining. I had a pretty small kitchen. In fact, the charts covered every single wall of my kitchen, and I had to put one on the ceiling. And sometime shortly thereafter, I was sitting there eating watermelon at midnight. Now, we know that it was midnight because you cannot eat watermelon within 6 hours of any other food. And we know that it was watermelon because if you look at all those charts, that's about the only thing left to eat. Fortunately for me, at the same time that I was exploring alternative medicine, I was also exploring feminism. And I began to realize that the person who told me to eat raw food was a man, and the person who told me to eat brown rice was a man, and the person who told me that I needed to watch out about food combining was a man. And that maybe, perhaps, there might be some women out there who had some ideas, and I began to formulate in my mind that there might in fact be a whole other way of approaching healing that comes from women's unique views of the world and women's unique ways of handling problems that come up. It was a very fine thread. Most of what we're talking about now, the church did its best to exterminate. In Europe, low number, 2 million women, high number, 11 million women killed over 2 centuries. They were the ones who knew how to be healthy. Sir Francis Bacon, in his journal, says, "The universe runs according to laws, and we will learn the laws of the universe and the laws of healing. We will learn the laws of the universe the same way we have learned the laws of healing, by torturing witches." You might want to think about what that means for what we now know. That has come directly from a man's apprehension that the way to learn is to torture other living things. As a feminist, as a woman, I wanted to find this other way. I just am back from an awards ceremony in Boston, and a book was just published a few months ago in which I'm included, called The Four, not F-O-U-R, but F-O-R-E, The Four Mothers of Women's Spirituality. And there are 33 of us who were honored in this book as bringing women's spirituality to the forefront. One wonderful woman who couldn't be there because she died a few years ago is Merlin Stone. And Merlin, doing her doctoral thesis, said, "I'm going to write about the goddess." And her advisor says, "Merlin, there's no goddess. Are you crazy?" And Merlin persisted, and she told us when she was teaching at the Wise Women's Center that she would go into a used bookstore and she would walk through the bookstore and she would begin to hear, and she would follow that sound. And it would be emanating for a book, or a book would fall out on her foot. And that would be a book about the goddess. Her book, When God Was a Woman, is one of the absolute classics. As I began to move deeper into this, I personally asked for a guide to help me. And that guide lived 300,000 years ago. I have found her invaluable help in understanding how to truly be on the earth, despite the fact that I am living in the 21st century. We are all right here in this century, and yet there's many things from our far past that still live in us and can be awakened and can inform us in very, very deep ways. So what are these 3 start-overs in my life? The scientific tradition, which I was brought up in, and most of us were. The heroic tradition, which is thought of as alternative medicine, and the wise woman tradition. It's not the wise women's tradition, it's the wise woman tradition. So that includes man. In fact, the word shaman is a word from Siberia, and it means woman with drum. There is no such thing as a female shaman, because all shamans are women. And if a man wishes to be a shaman, there's only one task that he has to complete to be a shaman, and that is, he has to be a woman. Brant Secunda talks about the grandmothers who locked him in the cave of grandmother growth. They rolled a very large stone against the entrance of this cave, and they said, "Brant, when you figure out how the cave of grandmother growth came into existence, then we will let you out of the cave." And he goes, "How will you know when I figured it out?" And they go, "Brant will know. And we'll either let you out of the cave or we won't." All right? And I think the symbolism is pretty clear. Brant had to discover how to have a womb, how to be a womb man, how to be a woman. The wise woman tradition includes all of us. So let's start where we all started, with the scientific tradition. The scientific tradition likes to measure, and if you don't measure up, we'll fix you. Measure and fix. These are the verbs of the scientific tradition. But we have to ask ourselves, measured against what? So suppose you go for an eye exam, and you're sitting there and putting these things over. Well, now we all know that perfect vision is 20/20 vision. But let me ask you, what is 20/20 vision? 20/20 vision is what a 20-year-old white man can read at 20 feet. So if you don't measure up, it means you might not be a 20-year-old white man. However, the doctor will be happy to make you see just like a 20-year-old white man. Very interesting, isn't it? Because measurement implies that there's a standard, but the standards have been made up by people. And at this point, those standards have primarily been made up by white men. So that when we are measuring people, we are measuring to see whether or not they're white men. And if they're not, then we'll see if we can make them. Now, for people who aren't white and for people who aren't men, this does not work out very well. We'll let it go whether or not it works out well for white men. At least you're the standard at which things are being measured. My dear friend Kay Gardner lived in Maine, a wonderful flutist, went to the emergency room there. She said, this terrible pain in my back. Whoa, it really hurts. And they said, here's a muscle relaxer. And they sent her home to die of her heart attack. Because women's heart attacks have different symptoms than men's heart attacks. Women, let me put it bluntly, are not smaller men. We are physiologically different, and our heart attacks are different. We don't get crushing pain in the front of our chest, we get pain in the back. We don't get the kind of symptoms that men have. My mom was about to go to bed. She said, goodness, my breathing doesn't feel right. I'm going to sit up for 5 minutes and see if it just stabilizes. And at the end of that 5 minutes, she said, something is wrong here. And she called the ambulance, and she went to the hospital. And at the hospital, they said, you're having a heart attack, because that's a heart attack symptom for women. Yeah, very subtle. They called my mom's attending physician, and they said, she's here in the hospital with a heart attack. And he said, I examined her less than 36 hours ago. Her heart's fine. She couldn't be having a heart attack. And they said, well, she is. Because the tests that we do on cardiac function miss heart disease in women over 90% of the time. Men tend to clog up big blood vessels. Women tend to clog up the little ones. So you can have a woman, the blood's flowing through the big blood vessels just fine, but the little ones aren't working well anymore, and that can give rise to a heart attack. Very different things happening. So when we go to be measured, the first question, especially any woman and any person of color needs to ask is, who am I being measured against? And do I want to be fixed so that I am like that person? Now, whether or not lowering cholesterol leads to reduction in heart disease, heart attack, and stroke is a point we're not going to argue here today, but it is definitely a point to be argued. Cholesterol has been demonized. Cholesterol is a natural substance. Your brain is mostly cholesterol. Cholesterol is incredibly important in your body. Cholesterol is one of the best things that we get from the animals. Thank you so much. And cholesterol is critical in brain development of young children. Having a young child who does not get animal products is basically child abuse. Yeah. Children need cholesterol, and they need a lot of it, especially during those first formative years, which means meat, which means real milk, which means butter, which means good quality animal products for our children. However, we do have very solid evidence that lowering cholesterol in women does nothing except shorten their lifespan. For many of the women in this room, we have now reached the grand and glorious age in which our cholesterol measurement is the best predictor of our lifespan. Once you are past the age of 69, the higher your cholesterol, the longer you will live. Right? Right? No cholesterol-lowering drug has ever been found to improve women's life expectancy or to decrease their risk of actually having a heart attack. And yet, doctors are told to put women on statins just like they're told to put men on statins because no distinction is made. In fact, and I was astonished to discover this when I was researching for my breast book, the vast majority, like 99.9% of the drugs on the market now, have never been tested on women, including drugs against breast cancer, including drugs against ovarian cancer, including drugs against cervical cancer and uterine cancer. They're not tested on women because it's unethical to test drugs on women. I don't know where that leaves you men. Right? But now that we are actually starting to have in scientific medicine, women's medicine as a study, we are discovering that there's drugs, especially some painkillers, that when tested on men appear to be useless, but are highly effective for women. So we are measured, and we are measured by standards that don't reflect us, and then we're going to be fixed, and we're going to be fixed to those standards, but that does not in any way guarantee that we will be healthy. In fact, what is the definition of health in the scientific tradition? The absence of disease. Now, as we all know, you can never prove an absence, can you? So we are left with fear. The emotion of the scientific tradition is fear. Who recommends that you go for an annual checkup? Not the AMA. There is no medical body of any kind that recommends an annual checkup. The insurance company wants you to do it, not for health. This is not a recommendation for health. In fact, what we find is the healthiest, longest lived people are the people who don't go for annual checkups. Right? The more you go to the doctor, the more likely you are to be prescribed a drug or to be sent for a test. Let me tell you a pretty horrific true story. A dear friend of mine who she was first a midwife. She started being a midwife when she was 19, and she studied and she worked for 20 years, and during that time, she got very interested in herbs, and she became a really excellent herbalist. And now, as her children are starting to leave home, she said, you know what? I think I'd like to be an MD too. And so she went through all of that, and of course her loans were enormous, so big that she couldn't set up a private practice, so she had to go into practice with some other people. And she called me up, we've known each other for a very long time, and she said, you know, trying to figure out if I should go into practice with these people. It's nice, it's by my house, but something odd about that. And we talked about, you know, pros and cons and thises and that's, and she wound up deciding that she would work with them. And she worked there for 2 years, and she just called me up a few months ago, and she said, I can't believe it. They brought me in, and they said, you know, we're going to have to let you go because you're not coming up to the standard of this office. And she said, I'm not meeting your care standard? They said, you know, first visits here, you're sending people home with like $5,000, $6,000 worth of tests and drugs. Our office minimum is $10,000. If you can't prescribe $10,000 worth of drugs and tests, then we don't want you in the practice. Don't think this isn't happening to you. Don't think that this is not happening in your healthcare. If you're putting your health in the hands of some expert, you have to understand that that expert might not have as their focus your health. They might have another focus. They might have meeting the office minimum, or a variety of other things. There are certainly good people who are MDs, and we can find people who are really there for us, but we must understand that the vast majority of modern scientific medicine has very little to do with health. When Eastman Kodak said, we're going to encourage women to have mammograms, women who were radiologists said to them, you're crazy. Women are not going to expose their breasts to radiation, hard radiation. And Eastman Kodak said, sure they will. We'll scare them into it. Remember that the emotion of the scientific tradition is fear. You have to go for your yearly checkup. What if something bad is happening? You have to go for a mammogram. What if you have breast cancer? You have to get a PSA test, prostate-specific antigen. What if you have prostate cancer? Husband of a friend of mine, the two of them own a wonderful boat, and they were coming to the ends of their careers, and they were going to go off sailing for 2 years. And so he said, well, while I'm still employed by the university, maybe I'll go, get a checkup and just see that everything's fine, since I'll be far away from care. And his PSA was a little high. And the doctor said, well, ordinarily I'd just say, come back for another test in 6 months. He said, but you're going to be gone. He said, so why don't we do a biopsy? Sounds really simple, doesn't it? We'll just do a little biopsy. Right, now if they said, how about if we take a punch and we punch 6 holes in your prostate, right, by going through your rectum, maybe so many men wouldn't say yes. Because that is what is done. It's not a biopsy, it's 6 punches. And RG is now unable to get an erection and is often incontinent because they hit a nerve while they were taking the biopsy. Oh, P.S., he didn't have prostate cancer. The scientific tradition, is it interested in your health? Is his outcome a healthy outcome? Has his health been improved because he agreed to a biopsy? The National Health Services Task Force of the United States came out 10 years ago and said, mammograms are useless. Women of America disappointed me more than I have ever been disappointed in my life. They said, you can't take our mammograms away from us. What's wrong with you? All right. 4 years ago, the same agency, National Health Services Preventative Task Force, said PSA tests useless. And most doctors and men no longer do them because of experiences like what RG had. So those tests, those drugs that are so pushed on us by this scientific tradition of measuring and fixity are not there for your health. They're fabulous at dealing with trauma. The scientific tradition is just amazing. All right, a friend of mine pulled into an intersection. She had the green light. The semi ran the red light. T-boned her, broke her body and all of her bones into tiny little pieces. There was not a piece of bone below her pelvis bigger than 2 inches. All right? They sent a helicopter. They put her in the helicopter. They took her to a trauma unit. I couldn't have done that with comfrey and a drum. Right? I don't care what I chanted over her. They airlifted her. They put her, there. They glued her back together. They put in pins and rods and everything, and then they put her in the hospital to recuperate from that. And a week later, the people in the hospital said, "What are you all doing?" And we went, "What do you mean?" They said, usually when people are in a trauma like this and they come out of it, they get incredibly depressed. Who wouldn't be, right? At one minute, you're like driving down the road. The next minute, you're like, hello, I'm in a hospital and I can't move my body. Right? Depression is like very normal. They said, this woman isn't depressed. And one of the things that happens when they get depressed is they won't eat. And then it's very hard to get healing going because they're not eating. They said, not only is she not depressed, but we think we hear sounds of singing coming from her room. Right? Then Comfrey in a drum was doing some magic, right? So we're not going to throw the scientific tradition out. We're going to understand and recognize that the scientific tradition, which measures and fixes, can do a very good job of dealing with a diagnosed problem, can do a very good job of dealing with trauma, but does a very poor job of helping us when we have an acute problem or a chronic problem. In fact, it's the chronic problems that often send people to alternative medicine, isn't it? It's the I keep having bronchitis and you keep giving me antibiotics and when do we stop doing this problem? It's the my joints hurt all the time and I don't care how much cortisone you give me, I still hurt problem. It's the I really think I can't quite remember what it is I'm supposed to tell you problem, right? So we get to these places and we say, scientific medicine, not doing it for me. What else is there? The difficulty is that heroic tradition, that alternative, is not one thing, but many things. And so we can be sucked into those who say to eat raw food, or we can be sucked in by those who say macrobiotics, or we can be sucked in by those who say food combining, or any of the other possibilities out there. But all of them tell us that if you don't do it their way, there'll be terrible consequences. You know when you're in the heroic tradition, because in the heroic tradition, there are rules to follow. And if you don't follow those rules, you are going to pay for it. One of the things that's kind of nice about the scientific tradition is we're not responsible for anything. Oh, you had a heart attack? Oh, well, it wasn't your fault. Right? So we're completely free of responsibility because we're like children in the scientific tradition. Mommy, Daddy, God is going to take care of it. When we move into the heroic tradition, we become responsible for everything. Totally and completely and utterly responsible for everything. So if you have a headache, you must have bad thoughts. If you have cancer, it's because you have eaten wrong, right? Everything that's going on is within your absolute control, and I, the hero, will tell you what rules to follow, and you will follow them, and you will be cured. Suppose you follow them and you're not cured. That's because you didn't believe. Suppose you don't follow them and you're cured. You didn't have a problem in the first place. And if you don't follow them and you're not cured, I told you so. It's very attractive to be the heroic healer because the heroic healer is always right. The scientific tradition can be described as a line. It's very linear, right? So health is over here and sickness is over here, and they're at war with each other. Right? The heroic tradition is a circle. And if you're doing it right, you're inside the circle. And if you stray, you're outside the circle. Oh, you filthy sinner, you. What do you have to do to get back in the inner circle? Repent. Repent of all your wicked ways and follow the rules. And then you're okay, because you're following the rules. And nothing bad can happen to you if you follow the rules. Or so we hope. Right. So the emotion of the heroic tradition is blame, shame, and guilt. I have met people who have followed the rules. They have cancer, they followed the rules, they still have cancer. Now they're going back looking through their past lives to see what they did wrong. Right? Because, of course, we're not responsible for everything any more than we're non-responsible. Neither of these is quite right. To say that we're not responsible, to say that we're totally responsible, not so good either. The heroic tradition has two verbs, and you're very familiar with them, to tell you what you're supposed to be doing. In the scientific tradition, we measure and fix. In the heroic tradition, we cleanse and we balance. Okay, let's try balance for a minute. Breathe in. Ah, what an absolutely perfectly balanced group. Very, very nice. I like it. Excuse me, I didn't say you could breathe out. That's all unbalanced now. God. So hard to get you all in balance. Right? Because balance is the step that immediately precedes death. Don't even try for it. Because balance is impossible in any living thing. We believe that it all started with a big bang, right? Kaboom, nothing and then everything. And everything means that all the particles of existence are spread evenly throughout time and space. And there it would have stayed, except about 0.0004 milliseconds into this event, there was a perturbation. And the perturbation disturbed the balance, started the movement that allowed stars, planets, galaxies to form. We think about the sun being here and the earth circling it, but in fact, the sun is moving through our galaxy. So it's not a circle, is it? It's a spiral. All right? It's a vortex. It's DNA. DNA is not balanced. If it was balanced, no life. Balance is the antithesis of life. Insofar as you are seeking balance, you are seeking death. Avoid balance. E.O. Wilson, probably the smartest man alive, smarter than Einstein, many people say. You probably haven't heard of E.O. Wilson because he spent his life studying ants. And most of it, let's face it, are not really interested in ants unless they're in the kitchen and then we want them out. But when he got to be 70, E.O. said, I've been studying small things for a long time. Maybe I'll write a book about something big. And so his big book is called The Future of Life. That's a big topic. And in this book, E.O. talks about dynamic disequilibrium. And he says, we so want to find other life somewhere in the universe. We so want there to be extraterrestrials. We so want there to be something besides just us. And we have to look only in the places in which there is not balance. Any world which is balanced cannot sustain or support life. Is Earth's axis straight up and down in a balance? No. It is that tilt to our axis that allows all of the forms of life we have on this planet. Dynamic disequilibrium. So the heroic tradition asks us to achieve a goal which not only can't we achieve, but should we achieve it, we die. Not very healthy, to my mind. If you go to that scientific practitioner, one of the measurements they're going to say is, what's your heart rate? And they're going to feel your pulse for 15 seconds, and then they'll multiply by 4, and they'll tell you your heart is beating 60 beats a minute, 70 beats a minute, whatever it is. All right. However, we now have computers who can do that. And the computer doesn't just tell us, oh, it's this many beats per minute. It actually can show us that there are somewhat varying intervals between each beat, because that computer can really get it down to the milliseconds, right? And what we find is within the range of good health, the person whose pulse is the most different from beat to beat is the healthiest person. So even in something as simple as your heartbeat, balance is against health, and dynamic disequilibrium is for health. Clean, cleanse, toxins? Not on this planet. There are no toxins on this planet. There are no toxins in your body. Toxins don't exist. How could they exist? What do we mean by a toxin anyhow? Suppose somebody was to seal this room up. Well, if they really sealed it airtight, we would soon be dead from what? Carbon dioxide. And yet carbon dioxide, is that a toxin? No. It's the breath of life to the plants, isn't it? Right? So it's food. It could kill us because we don't eat it, but the plants eat it. Now the plants in a sealed room would soon die of what? Oxygen. Is that a toxin?
For them.
Not for them. Right? It's for us. It's food. There's nothing on this planet that is anything other than food. There's only one rule here, and that is I eat you and you eat me. That's it. So long as we remember the rule of I eat you and you eat me, we're in the Tao. We're on the path. We're going along the way this planet is operating. So long as we start thinking about toxins, we're off the path. We're going somewhere where this planet isn't going and doesn't understand. In fact, the belief in toxins, cleansing and clean, has turned our planet into a trash heap. All right? When we didn't have the heroic tradition, we didn't worry about cleaning anything. We didn't worry about toxins, and so we did not create the kinds of messes that we now create. Let me tell you some stories about this, because I think it helps you to really get it into you in a different way. There's a big Central Valley in California. I'm sure some of you have visited it. And most of the produce that we eat in the United States is grown there, yay for local, but a lot of produce is still grown in the Central Valley of California. It's pretty dry there, so they irrigate. And the irrigation water has selenium in it. And the selenium tends to wash out with the irrigation water, and it all winds up in this lake, which is on a flyway. And selenium is not great for birds. And so all of these birds are flying, they land in the lake, they drink the water, it's high in selenium, they die. So it's a big problem. So they say, we got to do something about all the selenium in the water, in the lake. And they call in the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Army Corps of Engineers says, no problem, we will fix this for you. They start up the machines and they bury the lake. They fix it, right? We'll fix it, we'll fix your problem. No more problem with the birds dying because the lake's gone. Meanwhile, down in San Diego, much further south, there's a growing problem with orange peels. Have you ever made a glass of orange juice? How many oranges did you have to use? Right? And how many orange peels did you have? Did you put those orange peels in your compost pile? Yes. And then what happened? They lay there. They won't decompose. So down in San Diego, they used to just dump them in the ocean, and then they got told they couldn't do that anymore. And so soon, San Diego was like surrounded by towering mountains of orange peels, and they weren't quite sure what they were going to do with these orange peels. But there was a professor at the University of California, San Diego, and he was working on what would decompose the orange peels, and he found a fungus that would decompose the orange peels. But he couldn't quite get the fungus to grow because it needs a lot of selenium. And he couldn't get a source for all this selenium for the fungus to grow. And somehow he heard about the lake, which was now managing, of course, to reappear, right? It's like, you're going to bury me, please? Right? I'm a lake. Right, so the lake is reappearing, it's loaded with selenium, and he hears about this, and he starts getting the water shipped from the lake to San Diego, sprayed on the orange peels, inoculates it with the fungus. The fungus is happy because it has the food that it needs. The water now has less selenium, right? So what happens when we start to work with the way the planet works? Right? We have many fewer problems, don't we? Instead of seeing what we can fix, what we can cleanse, we see, what is this food for? What eats this? How does this add to the wholeness of life? Because let's face it, during most of our lifetimes, the word that has gone before cleansing is ethnic. Right? Once we start to clean and cleanse, we are at war. We are at war. If you are cleaning any toxins, you are at war. If you think you have to do a cleanse on your body, you're at war against your own body. There's no way that health can be built from war. There's no way that we can improve our health by cleansing anything. In fact, clean and cleanse, when used as it applies to living systems, really mean damage and destroy. So the next time somebody says to you, you should do this cleanse, you say, I should do this damage? You need to clean your diet. I need to destroy my diet? This is the real meaning of these words, because there is no way to be clean. If you were clean, that would mean you have no metabolic byproducts. And if you have no metabolic byproducts, that means you are dead. Right? You can never be in balance and be alive, and you can never be clean and be alive. So if our goal is to be alive, then we are not going to get there by cleansing or by balancing. We are given two verbs, both of which are incredibly injurious to us. 2 years ago, I was invited to Toronto to speak at a very large naturopathic doctors conference. There were over 1,000 people there. It was a really huge conference. There was a huge display area with hundreds of products there displayed, and all kinds of things, herbal combinations, herbs in capsules, herbal tinctures, all kinds of stuff being sold there. And I was very disheartened being there, because the statement that I heard the most was, I'm a naturopath. That makes me a doctor with a green coat on. And I thought to myself, but I don't want a doctor who wears a colored coat. I want somebody who thinks differently than a doctor. If I'm going away from the scientific tradition, I don't want scientific tradition with a rainbow on it. I want something really different. The naturopathic community in North America tends to be trained to use drugs. In fact, I heard most of these naturopaths say, why don't we have prescribing privileges? We should have we should be able to prescribe drugs. So what they use, since they don't have prescribing privileges, is soft drugs. Now, again, there could be a very big discussion about what is a drug. And we live in a culture that's pretty confused about what a drug actually is, but I think we can, at least for the purpose of this afternoon, come to some agreement about what a drug is. And I would say that a drug does not grow from the earth. Does that make sense? Right? If something grows directly from the earth, that's not a drug, it's a plant. All right, now we can make drugs from plants, but the plant itself is not a drug, as we are seeing with marijuana. Marijuana is not a drug now, it has never been a drug, it will never be a drug, it's a plant. Okay, it's no more dangerous than coffee, right, or any other plant. out there. Drugs cannot be made in your kitchen. Does that make sense? Right. So you're not going to be going out there harvesting some willow bark and making aspirin in your kitchen, right? Even though we know that the compound, salicin, in willow bark is made into aspirin. And so we want to ask ourselves, how is this compound in willow, and it's not just found in willow, how has this salicin actually become the drug aspirin? And there are basically three things that have to be done. First of all, the compound itself has to be extracted from the plant, then it has to be concentrated, and then it has to be purified. There are many, many drugs that are still made directly from plants. In fact, virtually all of the pain-killing drugs that are from the opium family are still made from opium poppies. All right, we're just figuring out, just in the past couple of months, we've figured out a way to synthesize some of those, which could be an enormous breakthrough. But we are still in a situation in which many drugs come from plants through these three processes, which basically have to be done in that order. We have to extract, we have to concentrate, and then we have to purify. About 8 or 9 years ago, I was teaching at the American Herbal Guild, and there was kind of a break, and people were in class, and I wasn't. And so I thought, well, I'll walk around at the vendors and see what people are vending, because that's always fun to see what people have. And I see there's a table with essential oils. So I back way far away from that table as I can get, and cling to the wall and go around it. And this woman says, come over here and enjoy our essential oils. And I go, nope, not. And out from under the table, there was a cloth on the front of the table, is a very tall, very wonderful herbalist, Peter Holmes, who rises up from behind the table. He says, what do you mean you don't use essential oils? How can you be an herbalist if you don't use essential oils? I put essential oils in every one of my remedies. You have to come to my class this afternoon. Class, half an hour, you be there. I said, no problem, Peter, I'll come to your class. Sure enough. So we're in a conference center, and you see how we could make this room to 2 rooms? I bet you've been in a class like that where you're in one of these long rooms, and Peter's up here, right? Way up there at the end of this long room, and we're all seated way behind him. And I come in, and there's the last row, and I take a chair from the last row and make a last row. All right, so I'm not even in the last row, I'm in the row behind the last row, and Peter's up there, and he starts telling us about this essential oil and that essential oil. And he opens them, and he passes them through the room. When it gets to the person in the last row, they turn around to hand it to me, and I put my hand out like this. So here's her hand with the essential oil, and there's my hand. We're not touching, so that's how close I got to any of the oils, right? Approximately a yard away from any of them. After this class is over, I go and I sit back at my booth where my books are, and right next to me is a woman that I've known also for quite a while who works for a very big herbal company. And I mention this because I want you to know she's used to herbal smells. And she turns to me and she says, my gosh, where have you been? You reek. What did I reek of? What did I smell of? Essential oils. How come? How did I smell of essential oil? I didn't touch it. It was in the air. And it was in my hair and my clothing because I sat in that room for an hour and a half. Now, because I knew I was going to talk about this, I actually took notes. They weren't very big. That's how all my notes are on a tiny little piece of paper. And so the next day I went to Peter and I said, Peter, that was a wonderful class. Thank you so much for really, pushing me to come. I said, I'm going to be talking about this class because it's so important. And I'd like you to go over my class notes because I don't want to get anything wrong. And he kind of looks right now. And I show him the notes. He's like, well, sure. It's a tiny little piece of paper here. All right, and a couple of hours later, he says, here's your notes back. He says, it's all totally right. He said, I would have added this, I would have added this, I would have added this. He said, but what you got is right. I said, so essential oils are made by extracting the oil from the plant? He said, that's right. I said, and then you concentrate the oil? He said, that's right. I said, and then you purify it? He said, you got it. How do we make a drug? Extract, concentrate, purify. What are essential oils? Drugs. They're not herbs, they're drugs. They don't grow from the ground. You cannot make it in your kitchen. They are drugs. They are straight out drugs. Make no mistake, essential oils are not safe in any way at all unless you think washing your body with an antibiotic would be safe. Unless you think smearing antibiotics on your body would be safe. Because essential oils are antibacterial, antifungal, antimicrobial. And the basis of your health is your gut flora. The basis of your emotional health, the basis of your spiritual health, the basis of your physical health is what lives in your gut. And those are bacteria, microorganisms, and fungi. Smelling, being in a room with, applying to your body, any essential oil will kill gut flora more thoroughly than taking an antibiotic. Think about it. If you smell the oil, if it's in the room, that is going into your lungs and directly into your bloodstream and your heart. It's like injecting essential oils into your heart when they're in the air. If you put essential oils on the skin, again, they go directly into the circulatory system. The liver is the guardian of our bodies. When we ingest something, then it goes to the liver, and the liver decides whether or not it's safe for it to be in the body. But if we are inhaling or applying, the liver doesn't get that initial chance. So the essential oils destroy the very basis of health in any way that they are used. Even worse, I know that many of you have essential oils, and perhaps somebody has spilled a bottle of essential oil on a finished wooden surface. Yes? What happened?
Just strips it.
Takes the finish right off, right?
Yep.
Whoosh, right? Our cells have a membrane around them. Every cell in our bodies has a membrane around it, which is a double lipid layer. It's two fats, one fat which likes water and one fat which is afraid of water, and that forms the membrane, the three-dimensional membrane around your cell, and essential oils destroy this. Whether you breathe them in, whether you put them on your body, or whether you actually ingest them, essential oils, like stripping the varnish off the table, destroy the cellular membranes in your body. Worse yet, recent scientific studies have found that essential oils kill mitochondria. Mitochondria is the energy center of every cell in your body. Anytime you are smelling, applying, or ingesting an essential oil, you are destroying millions of mitochondria. Essential oils are more hormonally disruptive than BPA, which is a kind of plastic. The softer plastics, like plastic film over food, have very hormone disrupting effects. And throughout North America, as the use of essential oils grows, we find more and more young children with hormonal disruptions. I personally have 2 students whose little boys have grown breasts from using organic lavender oil shampoo. Incredibly disruptive to our bodies. Essential oils are drugs. Purely and simply, they cannot promote health. Do they get rid of disease-causing organisms? Yes, they do, and so do antibiotics. But nobody is going out and pushing antibiotics as a way to be healthy, right? We all understand that if we take an antibiotic, we have to do something to make up for what we've just done. And there are times when an antibiotic is absolutely the right thing, but personally, I would far rather use an antibiotic than use an essential oil. It will have far easier for me to repair the damage to my body because it's very limited, whereas the damage from the essential oil is very broad. I started understanding what was happening when during a 12-month period, 3 people asked me for assistance, and they all 3 had the same problem. It wasn't just these 3, but they were linked in my mind because they had the same problem, which is their immune systems just didn't seem to be working right anymore. And I asked myself, is there something about these 3 with the immune system problems that links them? And I realized, they're all massage therapists. So they were up to their elbows in essential oils for hours every day, and eventually the immune system simply collapsed under the onslaught. One of them, a wonderful woman named Mary Rose, has now gone on to found something called natural scent therapy. What a great idea. Suppose that we wanted the scent of lavender while we were giving a massage. Could we have a lavender plant? And could we, before the massage, go to that lavender? What would happen if we did that to the lavender? It would scent the room, wouldn't it? And then at the end of that massage, I'd have to throw the lavender plant away, right? No. I could use it again? I didn't use up all the smell of it? You mean I could do another massage? Well, at the end of the day, I have to throw the lavender plant away, right? You mean I could use that lavender plant again the next day? How many lavender plants in a 1 ounce bottle of essential oil of lavender? The lowest figure that I've been given is 1,000 pounds of lavender. All right. Is this good for the earth? Is this what you want? When you buy an essential oil, do you want to buy 1,000 pounds of a plant? Is that your intention? I don't think most people really realize what they're doing. I don't think most people really put it together. Oh, this little bit of oil takes this huge amount of land to grow. And instead, what could I use? 1 lavender plant, which I could use over and over again if I cared for it and put it out in the sun. Probably 2 would be good, right? I'd use one inside on Monday and the other one would be outside, and then we'd switch them off so that everybody gets some sunlight and treat them nicely. They could go on for years and years and years, right? I could do hundreds of massages with the scent of lavender oil in the room from 1 lavender plant. And I would have not just the scent of the lavender, but I would also have the energy of the lavender, wouldn't I? Because I would have put my hands on that living plant. And that plant is in the room with us. And it communicates with us. And I say, I have Sally coming today and her knees hurt. And everyone goes, oh, knees hurt, okay, I'll help, no problem. Because plants want to help. They're happy to help. Lavender oil? I can't talk to you anymore. Now it's a drug. Hey, Sally's coming, her knees hurt. Right. When we contact the plant, something different happens than when we take the plant and turn it into a drug. All right. I have worked in the health food industry. I don't now. But when I was a single mom, it was a good place for me to work. And I helped set up lots of herbal sections in many health food stores. And so I understand and I know that your health food store doesn't stay in business because it sells you yogurt and brown rice and organic butter. Your health food store stays in business because it sells you supplements. What pays the rent is the supplements. Those health food stores have to sell supplements in order to be there for the other things that you want, should you buy them. Now, you will hear people say, there's nothing left in the soil, and that's a big fat lie. There's plenty left in all soils. Every soil has lots and lots left. But what is required in that soil to make the nutrition in the soil available to the plants is exactly the same thing as the basis of your health, which is microorganisms. Your health is completely dependent on the microorganisms in your gut, and the health of a plant that is grown is dependent on the microorganisms in the soil. Do you have a path that you like to walk? Have you walked that path perhaps through the woods? What happens where you walk? Soon there's bare earth on that path, isn't there? Is this because you're bigfooting it? No. It's because the slight pressure of your foot kills the microorganisms in the soil. And then nothing can grow there. So simply by walking on that path, and you don't have to do it every day, do you? So now imagine tractors out there growing the food, and now we're going to dump synthetic fertilizer on the soil, which shuts down the microbial action. There's plenty in the soil, but the plants can't get it because of what we're doing. So you can take soil, grow food organically, there's going to be lots of nutrition in that food because you are encouraging the microbes. Sir Howard said, healthy people come from healthy food, and healthy food comes from healthy soil, and healthy soil is a result of the microorganisms in that soil. So it is certainly not that our soils are lacking in anything, nor is there any pill that could in any way replace what we get from food any more than the first violin could replace a symphony. If I took you out to the symphony and the curtain went up and there was one violinist sitting on stage, what would you say? I thought we were going to the symphony, Susan. Where's the tubas and the timpani and I said, oh, well, everybody follows the first violin. We don't need anything except the first violin. I was in a used bookstore, and there's this big tome, about 3 inches across, vitamin C. I think, oh, yeah, I need to get this. I need to learn about vitamin C. It's a really complicated vitamin. Let me get this. And I'm opening it up, and I read like the introduction, and it says, and don't quote me on the date, because I'm not good on dates. It says, in 1916, we discovered that ascorbic acid was the most important part of vitamin C. That is the only time in this entire book, which is used in nutrition courses throughout North America, that any mention was made that ascorbic acid does not equal vitamin C. If you go to the store to buy vitamin C, what do they sell you? Ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is one of 100 interrelated substances that function in your body as vitamin C. Taking ascorbic acid does not give your body vitamin C. It gives it ascorbic acid. I have sat in laboratories where we've given people 1,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid and waited, and we didn't have to wait long, until they peed. And then we look at the pee, and that pee contains exactly over 950 milligrams of ascorbic acid every single time. So basically, taking a pill of ascorbic acid makes your urine really rich in ascorbic acid. People say, well, what about that? There was that man who got the Nobel Prize who used ascorbic acid in like really large doses, right? Right, Linus Pauling, right? Well, if you actually read Linus Pauling's personal journal, he said, I'm so interested in the placebo effect. And I think that the placebo effect is really underused. And because I have this position, I'm going to use an inert substance that couldn't have any effect on the body. And I'm going to tell people it cures cancer, and let's see if that works. So what he chose as his inert substance was ascorbic acid. He never personally believed that it was vitamin C because he's a scientist. He knows it's not vitamin C. He was using it as a vehicle for belief.
You've got power of the mind, though.
I'm sorry?
Power of the mind.
Sure, but that's not what people believe, is it? No, people believe he used vitamin C. No, I agree with you, that the power of the mind is incredible. Truly, truly incredible. As a matter of fact, the American man who started acupuncture in the United States, Ted Kaptchuk, who started the New England School of Acupuncture and wrote The Web That Has No Weaver. If you're interested in Oriental healing philosophy, The Web That Has No Weaver is the best book. Ted Kaptchuk, who has been an acupuncturist now for over 40 years, a few years ago said, I'm throwing away the needles. The needles don't do anything at all. It's just my healing presence. And we have shown over and over again that, in fact, acupuncture does not do much of anything when we do it in a controlled setting in which we have a device and the person doesn't know whether they are actually getting an acupuncture needle or whether they're just getting something that somewhat feels like that to them. And we see no difference of any kind. And Ted, the basically founder of American acupuncture, says exactly the same thing, which is what you're saying the power of our minds is tremendous. But let's not confuse it with ascorbic acid. Now, the largest study done to date on supplementation was done in Denmark. It was done by a not-for-profit organization in Denmark, and it was not a study, but a meta-study. A meta-study means we are studying studies. We're not doing the study, we're collecting studies. And many people, myself included, tend to like meta-studies more than studies because any one study can have problems. But when you look at lots of studies, you're going to probably get a little closer to what's actually going on. They really wanted to be completely above reproach in this, and so the people who worked on the study received no pay at all. So not-for-profit agency, the people received no pay, and 55% of the studies they included came from the supplement industry. They really wanted to say, we did this, nobody can complain on how they did this. They looked at the supplementation habits of over 8 million people in westernized countries, because that's the only place where people take supplements. They looked in North America, Europe, Australia. And what they found was that people who take supplements have the same amount of acute disease. People who take supplements have the same amount of chronic disease. The only difference was people who take supplements die sooner. Vitamin Retailer America says your average American spends $125 a month on supplements. Your health food activist American spends $300 to $500 a month on supplements. And your I am going to live forever, or oh my gosh, I have a terrible diagnosis, is spending $1,000 or more per month on supplements. Every single supplement had repercussions. Take 300 milligrams of ascorbic acid daily for 6 months and you will double your risk of adult onset diabetes. Take a vitamin E supplement, get diagnosed with cancer, you're 7 times more likely to die than the person who wasn't taking a vitamin E supplement. Take a multivitamin with vitamin A in it, you increase your risk of a hip fracture by 48%. It goes on and on and on. There is no supplement that is anything other than a drug, right? Supplements don't grow out of the earth. Supplements can't be made in your kitchen. These are drugs. These are the soft drugs that the heroic tradition pushes on us and wants us to believe are natural remedies. There is no supplement of any kind that is natural. At another herbal conference, and they had a big, wonderful teacher's dinner. None of the students were invited. You all are invited to our teacher's dinner here on Thursday night, but the students weren't invited, and there were a lot of presenters, big conference. And I uncharacteristically arrived a little early and sat down, and there were little place cards, and the one next to me was so-and-so, president of this supplement company, and I'm like, God. So I am picking up his place card, right? And I'm going to walk it to some other place. and I'm just going to switch it off with somebody that I know that I want to sit next to at dinner. But he comes in early and finds me in the act, holding his place card, and he says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." I'm like, "Oops." I said, "I'm moving your place card so that you can sit next to someone that you'll enjoy." And he said, "I asked to be seated next to you." I'm like, I said, "Look, you're not going to convince me." He said, "Convince you of what?" I said, "The supplements are any good." He said, "I don't want to convince you of anything at all." I said, "Really? But don't you?" He said, "Let's talk." So we sat down, and he said, "Look, supplements are just total junk." I'm like, "Yeah?" I said, right? So his line of supplements are not supplements, but foods, and not, like I've seen people say, "Oh yes, my supplement is a food supplement," and they have like a pill this big, right? And it contains 40 vegetables and 40 fruits. And you say, sure. What are we talking about here? A milligram of each one of them? Right? It's like if I said, "I'm smelling a carrot, that will improve my health," right? It's like, Susan, that's not going to do it. So in order to get like 100 IU of vitamin E from his supplements, you have to take 8 huge capsules. And he sells them only to MDs because they are actually food. Right? Now, you're not going to find that on the shelves anywhere. So let's go back to your average person that's spending $125 a month on supplements. What could we do instead? Nourishing herbal infusions. Last night at Lorna's, I said, "Lorna, do you have a scale?" Then we got out the scales in her house, and we weighed out 1 ounce of dried nettle. That's stinging nettle. And we put it into this quart canning jar, and we filled it up with boiling water, put the lid on it, and went to sleep. This morning, I rummaged through her drawers, found the strainer, poured it through that, squeezed that wet plant material to get all the liquid out of it, put that in the compost. One of my Maori elders says, "Don't expect any plant to help you if you throw it in the trash." Good advice, huh? Don't expect any plant to help you if you throw it in the trash. Yeah, right? So you have some spent plant material. You don't have compost? Then throw it on the ground, right? I'll open the door and just toss it on the lawn. I'll say, "Oh, you have some potted plants here. Let's just put this herb in the potted plants," right? 2 months later, they call me and say, "You cannot believe what my plant looks like. It's like covered in flowers." I'm like, "Yeah, these things are great." As a matter of fact, wonderful apprentice of mine from Kansas, nearby state here, went home and said, "Throw out your supplements, drink nourishing herbal infusions." And they said, "Went to Woodstock and lost her mind." Everybody knows you can't get any nutrition from food. You have to get it from pills. All right? So Kay said, "All right, gang, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little experiment so that you can see what happens when you're working with nourishing herbal infusions. I want you to go out and I want you to buy 2 plants the same." Could you do that? As a matter of fact, you go to like a garden supply store, most of those plants are cloned. So they are exactly the same. So you get 2 plants that are the same, and you bring them home, and you treat them the same. If you go coochie-coochie-coo to one, go coochie-coochie-coo to the other. All right? If you want to be really scientific, then every 24 hours you'd switch where they are in the windowsill, right? So they really get exactly the same thing, but that's not really needed. What you're going to do that's different is once a week, you are going to water one of those plants with whatever nourishing herbal infusion you are drinking that day. And the other plant you're going to water with water. Well, that's not exactly fair. So let's make it fairer. One of the plants will be watered with nourishing herbal infusion, and the other one will be watered with water in which you have dissolved one of every supplement you take on a daily basis. Oh, why are you laughing? Because you don't even have to do this experiment, do you? You know what happens, don't you? What's going to happen to the plant that gets watered with the supplements? It's gonna die, and yet you take them. You know that they kill plants, and yet you think it would be good for you? Obviously not, gang. I asked Lorna, I said, how much did that ounce of stinging nettle that we put in that jar cost you? She said, it cost me $1. So suppose every day for 30 days, we used 1 ounce of stinging nettle. That cost how much? $30. My question to you is, what are you going to do with all the money you just saved? Book a massage, right? If you're spending $125 a month on supplements, and most people are spending more, you're going to replace every supplement you now take with these nourishing herbal infusions, and they will cost you, in fact, I buy my herb in bulk, right? Why buy an ounce of nettle? I know I'm going to use it over and over again. I might as well buy a pound. A pound of organic stinging nettle on the wholesale market right now costs $8. $8. There's over 250 milligrams of calcium in this amount of stinging nettle infusion. Magnesium up the wazoo. There's every known mineral needed for human health right here in this jar. The macro minerals, the micro minerals, and the mini minerals that we need. This is loaded with vitamins, B vitamins. There's actually some vitamin E in this. They're the precursors to vitamin A, right? This is loaded with protein. Have you heard of polyphenols? Yes, lots and lots of polyphenols, more polyphenols than in tea. Are we starting to get the idea that nourishing herbal infusions not only outdo supplements in giving us direct nutrition, but they outdo any other drink you could possibly consume? When apprentices come to live with me, the first thing they are told is, you are not allowed to drink anything until you have consumed 1 quart of infusion. Any given day, the first thing you drink is infusion. You're thirsty, you drink infusion. You want something with your meal, you drink infusion. When you've consumed a full quart of infusion, then you can go on to other drinks. Often, if I come up to a podium like this, there's a bottle of water standing here, and I'll pick it up and go, oh, water, never touch the stuff. Who would bother drinking water? Why drink water when we have nourishing herbal infusion? Far, far better for us than water. Had a fitness trainer apprentice with me last fall. I gave her 3 days, and then I said, all right, give me your water bottle. She said, what? I said, give me your water bottle. She said, what are you going to do with it? I said, I'm hiding it. She said, my water bottle. I said, yeah, I understand. Believe me, she said, but I have to drink 2 quarts of water every day. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. Here's where this story started, and it's a rather interesting story. The U.S. Army said, how much liquid do we need to give the soldiers? And so they made a study. And they said, well, your average human being, and especially a soldier, needs about 2 quarts of fluid a day. A quart of fluid comes directly in food. All right? So soup or cooked vegetables, you're going to get a quart of fluid from your food. The other quart has to be actually consumed. All right? So the original study never said 2 quarts. The original study said we need to consume a quart of liquid a day, and everything counts. Coffee counts, tea counts, everything you drink counts toward that quart. However, a very smart marketing executive at a very large soft drink firm said, what if we tell people they have to drink 2 quarts of water a day? Wouldn't that sell a lot more water? So if you've heard that story, that you have to drink 2 quarts of water a day, right, it's damaging your health big time. Right? As a matter of fact, we've actually had 2 women die from consuming too much water. It dilutes your electrolytes. It weakens your bones. It weakens the electrical structure of your body. It's just a washout, is what it is. So certainly drink to thirst if you're thirsty, but ditch the water bottle, because most of us are not living in New Mexico, Arizona, are the high plateaus of Colorado, where you do have to drink more than you would in other places. You live in here, it's like where I live. In the summer, you got to be a fish, right? Right? It's wet. It's wet. The air is filled with moisture. We don't need that. I stepped into a stream in the high plateau in Colorado in my blue jeans. The seam of my blue jeans was completely dry in 5 minutes. That's how dry it is. You can't wait till you're thirsty to drink there. You really do have to have a bottle welded to your side and just keep drinking, because the air is just the opposite of what we get, right, in this wonderful moist air. So instead of water, nourishing herbal infusions. Instead of supplements, nourishing herbal infusions. It's not right around a holiday, but around holidays, what I suggest you do is you take all your supplements, wrap them up really nicely, and give them to someone you don't like much. Right? Start getting your herbs, start making your nourishing herbal infusions. I have a YouTube channel. And there's over 225 YouTubes of me and my fabulous granddaughter making all kinds of things. And we recently redid the Nourishing Herbal Infusion YouTubes. So there's a whole brand new set, and you can see me making nettle infusion, making oat straw infusion, making red clover infusion, making linden infusion, making comfrey infusion, and we're going to talk about those in my workshop. So we'll really get into the specifics. But for the remaining time that we have, let's talk about the wise woman tradition. The scientific tradition is a line. It measures and fixes. The heroic tradition is a circle. It cleanses and balances. The wise woman tradition is a spiral. It nourishes the wholeness of the unique being. Every spiritual text of any kind that I have read seems to me to say that I am created in the image of perfection. Does it seem that way to you too? Right? Whether it's the Bible or some channel message, I'm being told from every possible direction, I'm perfect. I'm created in perfection. So I said to myself, what's between what I'm experiencing and this perfection? And my answer was nourishment. If I nourish myself with everything that I need, then I will indeed be that perfection that I am told that I am. Now, I've been doing this work for many, many decades, and I know that many of you have as well, and so I think that we all understand here that getting people to change their diet is not going to happen. Maybe for a couple of weeks or even for a couple of months, but it's not going to happen. So I said, no, you're not going to, tell people to eat brown rice or tell people, no, that's not going to happen. But you know what? You can eat anything you want so long as you're drinking your quart of nourishing herbal infusion. Every morning, we have talking stick. Everybody has an opportunity to speak. No one gets to speak while they're speaking. One of the apprentices who'd only been there for about 10 days gets the talking stick. She looks at me and she says, I hate you. I said, wow, great apprentice, fabulous. Worldwide, the shamanic story is basically the same. The shamanic apprentice chooses a teacher they can trust and then projects onto that teacher all of the things they hate most about themselves. And that teacher has to be enough to deal with that, to have all of that projected onto them, to be demonized, to be thought to be evil, to be thought to be cruel and heartless and terrible. If the shamanic student is successful, their success is they take it back from you. And they say, oh, that's my stuff. Why did I give it to you? Right? In therapy, right, we have first the positive transference, oh, you're wonderful, and then the negative transference, I hate you, and then hopefully the non-transference, oh, I'm me. And so it is with the shaman. So, whoa, 10 days into it, she already hates me. Good work. I wonder what she hates me about. Because, of course, this gives me much material to work with, doesn't it? She says, I hate you. I, of course, can't say anything. It's a talking stick, but I'm wondering to myself. She says, I hate you. I hate you. You made my M&Ms taste terrible. Now, remember, the first thing they're told is they're not allowed to drink anything until they drink a quart of nourishing herbal infusion a day. So she has indeed been drinking her quart of nourishing herbal infusion. We make it together at night. We strain it in the morning. And everybody has their nourishing herbal infusion. And what happens when you are drinking these is that you are so well nourished that your taste buds come back. And when your taste buds come back, suddenly you go, ooh, that white sugar tastes terrible. Ugh, that's rancid oil. Why am I eating it? So I don't have to change your diet. You'll change your diet. Because you literally won't be able to tolerate eating things that are not good for you anymore. Not from willpower, not from anything other than, this tastes nasty. Ugh, I don't want it anymore. All right, what an easy way to do this. The wise woman tradition nourishes wholeness. Nourishment is what we consume. Nourishment is nourishing herbal infusions. But nourishment is like a three-legged milking stool. And there's a beautiful three-legged milking stool at Lorna's. Real country stool. Slab of a tree, 3 sticks stuck in the bottom of it, right? Yeah, that 3-legged milking stool. So what we eat, that's one leg. Compassionate listening, that's the talking stick every morning. And simple ritual. The simple ritual of a prayer before you eat. The simple ritual of meditation during the day. The simple, whatever simple rituals you have. I've seen people who get in their car and kiss their steering wheel. That's a simple ritual, right? Mwah, take me safely where I'm going. That's a simple ritual, right? And the simple rituals have been stripped out of modern life, so that we no longer have these rituals which nourish us in a very deep and wordless way, because it gives us a sense of continuous. It's, oh yes, yes, and my father did this, and my mother did this, and my grandmother did this, and my children will do this. And we have a sense that it's not just our personal lifetime, but that this continuing movement, this continuing spiral, because it's not just a dead line sitting there, and it's not a circle, which, let's face it, goes nowhere. It's a spiral. It's a vortex, which is moving. That's the life energy, is this spiraling vortex that all of life is about. Not balance, not clean, because after all, food grows from dirt. We like dirt. Somebody wrote and said, I'm not going to study with Susan. She has dirty feet. I do. And dirt under her fingernails. I usually do. Right? And what else would you want from somebody who's going to teach you about plants? Shouldn't my feet be dirty? Shouldn't there be dirt under my fingernails? I mean, hello, right? Since when did dirt become a dirty word? Right? Dirt is, after all, the basis of it all. Wholeness is not just pretty. This is the nice Susan. She's always on time. She'll do anything you ask her to do. She's so wonderful. This is the bitch. Now, I have a small problem with my shoulder. It hurts. My shoulder really hurts. I'll tell you, I have done everything. I have done massage, acupuncture, herbs. I've thought. I've done affirmations. I've prayed. I've even gone to the doctor, who suggested surgery, of course. And so I was thinking, wow, I'm going to be at this transformation conference, and maybe there'd be somebody there who could help me with my sore shoulder. Is there anybody who could help me with my sore shoulder? Anybody who has anything that you could recommend to help? My shoulder hurts so much.
Do your level best not to use it for as long as you can, especially not go up.
Okay, so I shouldn't use this at all. That's what I've been taught.
Well, no, this
And what's your suggestion?
To give up the bitching.
So I should cut my arm off and then my shoulder will feel better. Somebody else have another suggestion here?
DMSO.
Do what?
DMSO.
DMSO. So I should just ignore this, right? How about this? What would this do to my shoulder?
Make it worse.
This would make it, no, this would not make it worse. My shoulder hurts because I have stuffed this behind my back.
Well, there you go.
Right? My shoulder hurts. Why? Because I am denying the bitch.
So you just have to stop.
You have to. Wholeness is not one-armed. Right? Wholeness is about wholeness. Wholeness is not, the sun is setting, turn on the lights. No, wholeness is the sun is setting, the deep and nourishing dark is coming. Woman came to me, she said, I need your help. I want to have a baby. I said, okay, I can help you. Not directly, but I can help you indirectly. All right. She says, every cell in my body wants to have a baby. I said, you having a problem conceiving? She said, I have no problem at all conceiving. As a matter of fact, I've been pregnant 13 times in the past 2 years. I said, you've miscarried 13 times in the past? Yes, I've miscarried 13 times in the past 2 years. Now, you, like I, may at this point be thinking, maybe there's 1 or 2 cells in her body that doesn't want to be pregnant. You got to think that. Every cell in my body wants to be pregnant. No. But I'm not going to say that to her, right? Because if any of you had said to me, take your arm out from behind your back, Susan, I would have said, you miserable, terrible bitch. Right? Because that's what we do. If anybody dares to tell us what we're in denial of, we project it onto them. All right, so I can't just say to her, I think there's a rebellion going on in your body there. So instead, we're going to use our imaginations. I said, all right, close your eyes. And you and I are standing in front of a huge full-length mirror, and we don't have our clothes on, and you're trying to decide if you're pregnant or not. You're 3 days past the time when you should have been menstruating, and you're looking at your body and saying, am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? You can't quite tell. So we're going to make time go fast here because we're in our imagination. Time can do anything at once in our imagination. And now you've missed your second period and you're looking in the mirror and now you can tell. You're pregnant. Look, it's a little bulge. Oh, yeah, things are happening. Ooh. And we're going to make time go fast. And I just moved her month through the pregnancy. And we got, to like the 8th month of the pregnancy. I said, oh, you're really pregnant now. You're gravid. You can't see your toes. Right, you have long since abandoned your entire wardrobe. Right? You're asking people to bring you things because you don't want to haul yourself. And her eyes fly open and she says, you telling me I have to be ugly and distorted to be pregnant? And I said, yes. I don't think pregnancy is ugly and distorted, but she does. I'm going to agree with her. Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. So we've now found the voice that does not want to be pregnant. So at this point, we switch to a Gestalt technique. Gestalt means foreground, background. And it's like, I'm sure you've seen the image of the 2 faces, and there's a vase. You can see the vase or you can see the 2 faces. You can't see them both at the same time. Your mind can't do that. So she can't see the part that wants to be pregnant and the part that doesn't want to be pregnant at the same time. So we separate them. The part that wants to be pregnant sits on this rock over here. And the part that doesn't want to be pregnant gets this rock over here. And they get to talk to each other. And the part that doesn't want to be pregnant has some very valid concerns. It's concerned that she's going to just blow it when she's pregnant and turn into a slob. And so she's able to reassure this was, no, that's not going to happen. I'll do this, and I promise you this, and I'll enroll in this class, and I'll do this, and that. This is it. Okay. But, I'm also really concerned for your freedom. You're just going to, that's it. Once you're a mother, that's it. You will never have another moment to yourself. I said, no, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Listen, tell you what, I really hear this is a valid concern. And so what I'm going to do is I plan to breastfeed. But once the baby's 3 months old, once a week, I'll take 4 hours on one evening off, and if I have to pump milk or whatever I have to do. And again, this voice it's not unreasonable. It said, you really do that? I think I can trust you to do that. And 13 months later, she sent me a picture of her baby. How did she get pregnant? What did I nourish? We nourished the part of her that didn't want to be pregnant, right? This is nourishing wholeness. Nourishing wholeness usually means nourishing the part that we're in denial about. Nourishing wholeness usually means being willing to seek out those who can tell us what we can't see, what we have hidden behind our back that is now causing our distress and our pain, because we prefer to think of ourselves as positive. I'm so positive. If you were to go over there and unscrew the plate from the light switches, what would you find behind that plate? Wires. And they're called what? Positive and negative. Okay, let's unscrew the negative wire because we don't want any negative energy in here. Then what would happen? No light, because the power comes in on the negative wire. Your power, your wholeness, and your health is more linked to your negativity than your positivity. Is more linked to what you reject than to what you accept. Nourishing wholeness is not about a bunch of positive affirmations, or as Jung put it brilliantly, enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but making your own darkness real. Nourishing wholeness is not easy. Nourishing wholeness means we have to go down in the dungeon, find the keys to the cells, and let all of those we have imprisoned come upstairs and set a place at the table for them. For the part of us that is a bitch, the part of us that is enraged, the part of us that is in grief, the part of us that we have rejected is the part that needs to be nourished. This is wholeness. It's not half. It's whole. What's a hologram? A hologram is a very special image. And one of the most special things about it, it's kind of three-dimensional, which is real special, but really special thing is if you have a hologram and you cut it in half, you don't have a bottom half and a top half, you have two whole holograms. Suppose we take that half and cut that in half. What do we have now? Two more whole holograms, but each time we do that, we lose definition. It gets fuzzier. Most of us, throughout our lives, have cut ourselves into smaller and smaller pieces, trying to be balanced, trying to be clean, trying to be positive, trying to be all the things we think we're supposed to be, and so we lack definition. We lack focus. We lack clarity. You are still perfect. You are still whole. You can't be less than perfect. You can't be less than whole, but you can add pieces back and become clearer, more defined. You can actually have more fun when you bring more of yourself back, more of yourself to the table of nourishment. I looked at my life and I said, Susan, you keep getting into relationships with people who like to tell you what to do. I don't like to be told what to do. Why am I getting into relationships with these people who are telling me what to do? There must be some part of me that does want to be told what to do. How do I bring this part of me to the table? Well, let's see. I take a yoga class every week. At my yoga class is now set aside as sacred time for me to be told what to do. At my yoga class, I do exactly as I am told, and that completely satisfies the part of me that wants to be told what to do. And I no longer attract people who are telling me what to do into my life and my relationships, because I have nourished that part of myself. Instead of damning it, instead of trying to get rid of it, instead of saying, this is awful, I have said, yes, there is this part of me, and let me give it something. It's always amazing to me how little these parts of ourselves want. When we lock them up, they're like huge monsters. When we unlock the door of the dungeon and bring them up to the table, they turn into tiny little monsters who really just need a thimble of soup and a crust of bread. But they need that. They need that nourishment. So many things that I can tell you, but our time is just about up. This book talks about these three traditions. When I was in New Zealand, I was invited to dinner to the home of the most famous naturopath in New Zealand. Very heroic. Oh my gosh. And I went into his library. These are actual quotes from actual books in this man's library. You must fast in order to keep your body clean. What I suggest to people who say they're going to fast is they must prepare for fasting. And the first preparation is don't breathe for 3 days. After that, do not circulate your blood for 3 days, and then you are ready to not eat for 3 days. Because eating is as important as breathing and circulating your blood. In most humans, the digestive tract is pure filth. The mind must be controlled, trained, and directed. Real things are of the spirit. Daily life is unworthy of any thought. If human beings consumed only radiation, and if radiation was never polluted, then sickness would be unknown and the procreative function would remain dormant. In fact, the heroic tradition tells us that healthy women neither menstruate nor go through menopause. Do I need to tell you how absurd that is? Half of women who adopt a vegan diet and half of women who adopt a raw food diet lose their menses within the first year of adopting such a diet. Half of those women will, in fact, never be able to conceive. These diets are completely and totally inadequate for human women. I'm not going to say whether or not they work for men, because they work mostly with women, but I will tell you that if you are a vegan or you're eating a raw food diet, you are on the totally and completely wrong path. There is no nutrition of any kind available from raw food, and there is nothing on this planet that eats raw food. Not a single thing on this planet eats raw food because you can't get any nourishment from raw food. My dear friend Brigitte Mars decided that she would follow her daughter's lead and be on a raw food diet. And because we love each other so much, we decided we would make money off our difference of opinion. After all, we're Americans. What do you do when you have a difference of opinion? You make money from it. So we hired a videographer, and we hired a studio, and we hired a mediator, and we had the raw versus cooked debate. And we did it with all the rules. You know, I had a certain amount of time to give my position. She had a certain amount of time to give hers. Then I had a certain amount of time to say why hers was full of holes, and she had a certain amount of time to say why mine was trash, right? And when I saw the video, I said, Brigitte, we can't sell this. She said, why not? I said, look at you. I said, first of all, physically, you look awful. You really, she looks terrible, terrible. She looks kind of zombie-like in it. It's like, oh. I said, I really love you, and I don't want people to see you looking like this. I said, and the stuff you said, Brigitte, I mean, she said, there was an MD, and he had 100 patients with multiple sclerosis, and he put them all on a raw food diet, and all of them no longer have multiple sclerosis. I mean, who here believes that? All right, I said, tell us 99 improved. Give us something, because nobody could believe 100%. We simply couldn't. I said, and I want to see the study. 3 days later, she called me up. She said, I found the book that mentioned the book, that talked about the book, that said there was a study. I said, Brigitte, it's not good enough. She says things like, when you walk into somebody's house and you smell all of that great stuff in the air, that's all the minerals from the food in the air. hydrologic cycle. Isn't that in 3rd grade? The sun shines on the ocean, pure water comes up. Minerals, they're heavy, they're rocks, they sink. All right, you can't boil the minerals out of your food, they don't outgas. Right? There's a few vitamins you can transfer from the food into the cooking water, and if you throw the cooking water away, you'll lose them, but they don't outgas. It's not vitamins and minerals in the air, it's volatiles in the air. So, because of this, we just canned the whole thing, but one of the people who was there that day had a copy and put it up on YouTube. So you can go to YouTube and you can find the raw versus cooked debate. I noticed that the raw food people seem to be somewhat active in your area, and you will need some good information to put them in their places so that they begin to understand that most of them are surviving because they're not truly eating a raw food diet. Fermented food is not raw. Sprouted food is not raw. Dehydrated food is not raw. These are actually cooking methods, right? And if they didn't eat these foods, they would die, right? Because you cannot survive on raw food, even at this level. Suppose we take a raw sunflower seed and a roasted sunflower seed and plant them in the ground. And we're going to plant them at just the right depth, in just the right spot, and they're going to have just the amount of sun and water and heat that they need, but we're going to go away for 3 weeks. And when we come back after 3 weeks, what will we find? One of those seeds is now growing, right? The raw one is now growing up into a plant. And what happened to the roasted one? What happened to it? Some people say it deteriorates or it rots, but what do we mean? What's actually happening? What's happening in the soil?
The soil's eating it.
The microorganisms in the soil ate the roasted seed. What didn't they eat? Nothing on this planet eats raw food. From large animals to microorganisms, there is no nutrition of any kind available from raw food. We're going to talk more about this in the workshop. We're going to talk more about specific nourishing herbal infusions, lots and lots of stuff to tell you. I have 5 different books. I have correspondence courses, which are actually done, yes, by letter, not online, not email, right? As they say, plants don't email. Right? You're going to study plants. We're going to study plants from the earth, dirty feet, dirty hands. You're going to actually write in correspondence courses. You can come and visit me. I teach all over. So I hope that this is just the beginning of our relationship. Let it in, let it go, round and round we flow, weaving the web of wisdom. Let it in, let it go, round and round we flow, weaving the web of life. Let it in, let it go, round and round we flow, weaving the web of wisdom. Let it in, let it go, round and round we flow, weaving the web of life. Let it in, let it go, round and round we flow, weaving the web of wisdom. Let it in, let it go, round and round we flow, weaving the web of, weaving the web of, weaving the web of life.